Welcome everyone, and happy 1 year anniversary of our program here. So it's wonderful that we've been able to host these dialogues every month for a year now, and are planning to continue into the future with hopefully some positive modifications, new possibilities, new friends, new adventures. So all good things. And always, we wanted to thank our supporting organizations, our sponsors, if you will. So, of course, the Living Earth movement, and we have Charles and I think, yeah, is Bonnie here tonight as well? Wonderful. There's also the Cobb Institute supporting us, as well as the Institute for the Postmodern Development of China. So I don't think any of our friends from those organizations are able to join us this evening, but likewise, see what they're up to, and thank you from us. And Vivian, I'll hand it back to you to introduce Henry.
I'm delighted to introduce our friends, new friends to this group, Henry Mitchell. We actually met several years ago, 4 or 5 years ago, right? Right, with Henry, when we're organizing a group of regenerative farmers or food system activists from China to visit New York or in East Coast regions, where we have up and down roller coaster journey with 17 of such friends from China. We visited from farms to like learning centers to communities, and that was really fun experiences, and we kept in touch over the years. And I know Henry went to study architecture, and like out of all these majors that you can choose, you chose like the most difficult and probably the least sleep for students. I think that's architecture, right? And so yeah, I didn't hear from him for quite a while, and I have no idea what the field of architecture tortured him into. And then we got in touch again, and he was not doing architecture for his job, but something else. But he has much more thoughts than the architecture, and perhaps the current day architecture field cannot contain his big vision. So I invite him to come share his vision. And I also believe there's many um, sparks that in his slides might also trigger some of our imagination. So I invite Henry to go through your slides and maybe pause at a certain spot that if you want to have interactions. And everyone, please, in the chat rooms, like chat, send references, questions, and everything. Raise your hands and clap your hands, or everything. And then let's go enjoy it. Henry.
Yeah, thank you, Vivian, for the very kind words. It is, I don't think it's as some of the things aren't as profound as you make them to be, but that's okay. And sorry about my voice. It is not usually this deep, but I seem to have caught a sore throat riding the train. Um, yeah, happy to be here and happy to share with everyone just the thoughts I've been developing over the years, from as early as my undergraduate education, thinking about issues that I believe everyone gathered here care about. And like Vivian said, if there's a burning question or something you want to talk about, feel free to butt in at any point of the slides. I did prepare way too many slides probably, and I'll try to go through them as quickly as needed. So,
Around 40 minutes, sorry. And then we
oh
can
yeah, I can start a timer there. That will make it easy for me to keep track of. Um, but yeah, so with that said, I'm just gonna jump in it because that is more comfortable. Let's see here. I think first, in the beginning, I would like to talk about the concept of what makes a good life. And there's a little bit of context behind that. Let me start the slideshow. Let's see. Haven't had to do Zoom in a little while since school. Let's see. Screen share on the Mac is different.
Oh, maybe he's not.
Oh, did you not give me
Yeah,
screen
Jared.
sharing privileges?
It's set to all participants can share
Okay,
screen, so you should be good to
let's
go.
see.
Green button in
Reactions,
the lower bar.
share screen. Oh, there we go. It's all lit up. Cool. PowerPoint presentation. I'm gonna start with this one. And can you all see the screens? And if I
Yes.
go to play from the start, that's working for you
Looks
all?
great. Yep.
Okay, great. So a lot of this is eventually led to my graduate thesis for architecture, what I used to graduate. And the title was Earthly Matters of Cosmic Awareness. And it really sort of, it all begins with reflecting on how we live as human beings, right? So this is a picture of Times Square, and it really strikes me that we all live in these, not all of us, but modern architecture tends to not connect us to the world, the greater context of our planet and our cosmic systems. And instead, we're compartmentalized into these little boxes too often. And our public, as well as our private spaces now through screens everywhere, but it used to be with advertisements, our public spaces as well are taken over by the reaches of capitalism, taking over our attention. So the architecture, even in art, in media and video games, a lot of times reflect this sort of dystopian future of our commercial systems creeping too much into our spaces of living and into our space of mind. And too often we're plugged in nowadays in these short-term pleasure hits from social media, from apps, and from the internet. And these plugins are also plugged in to a power grid, to a energy generating system that isn't very sustainable and is draining the planet. And speaking of draining, it's quite literally draining our water supply. Right here in California, the water supply issue is terrible, right? We're taking from the Colorado River and we're irrigating so much agriculture where there was no water to begin with. And speaking of agriculture, we live in a world where most people don't really know where our food comes from, let alone how it's made and what it actually does to our bodies. So I kind of chose to focus on the three essential human needs of power, water, and food, and trying to take back some of that agency and think about, eventually I got to architecture and how architecture could empower us to take more control over these basic resources for human needs by way of interfacing, or let's say encountering the natural phenomenon right around us through our buildings. So, and artificial intelligence really blew up, interestingly, during my time at school. So around 2022, in the classroom, we were encouraged to use image generating AI. This is Midjourney, to envision dystopian and utopian futures. This was actually a class that we had at Virginia Tech in the architecture department, not in a film department that was about film. And I found what was really interesting was the dystopian part was a lot easier for the AI to imagine than the utopian part. So if you find keywords, especially like cyberpunk, that is a whole genre of media that is very maturely developed, and there's so much art of it that the AI can pick up on whatever humans did and just produce art like this very easily. It can imagine those few dystopian futures really easily. However, it was much more difficult for it to try to imagine a utopian future, at least when I was in class, it was, until more recently, Chobani decided to go ahead and make this video, which I'm sharing now through YouTube. Please let me know if the video is still working after I full screen.
If you didn't specially click share sound when you screen shared, we won't get the audio.
Oh, that is okay.
Okay,
We
great.
don't need the audio for this. So just to give you an idea of a different genre from cyberpunk, which is the dystopian world where everything is as depicted in like works like Blade Runner that people might be more familiar with. There's a new artistic movement called solar punk, and this is one. Well, I'll just let the video do the. Oh, actually, let me see if I can do this with audio. Share sound. Let's do that. Okay. It might have sound. If it doesn't, it's okay. So this is solar punk is a future that's much more ideal, even utopian, and where technology is actually serving as a way for us to harmoniously connect with the environment. Okay, so that's the video. This is the decommercialized version, and I'm gonna go back.
19 years old, myth would become.
Okay. Now let's go back to PowerPoint. Okay, I think we're back at the slides. Yes, we are. So this came out after I graduated, and I really like the wind turbines that are floating. I think that was a great idea, but this turned out to be a yogurt commercial. What I just showed you was the decommercialized, decommodified version with the advertisement part taken out. So it was really difficult for the AI to imagine a utopian future that fits in the solar punk genre, but now it has more material because people finally decided to make something. Before then, this was what I was able to generate. And so with that, what the discussion I kind of want to throw to everyone is, what do you think about when you think about a utopian future? Because essentially that's kind of what architecture deals with, is try to imagine a human existence and what kind of context it's put in and organized by. So I kind of I'm curious what all of you think about this, about utopia and dystopia, and especially what is a good life in relation to technology? If you all have any thoughts on that.
Well, I'd be happy to share. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you, Bonnie.
Henry, I love the visuals of this. I love I love this whole subject, and I've not thought about it very much or seen much visual art or YouTube's like this, but it's so unusual to see something that's animated and that is feels like it has something to do with the natural world and relationships with the natural world and with human beings, with each other. There was when she had a card and there's a picture of the older woman and the younger woman or something. And I think it's because I don't know what all the reasons are, but I didn't grow up in the United States and I didn't grow up watching cartoons. And frankly, I don't like animation. And it feels very often to me, I mean, there's some that of course is beautiful, but it tends to be mechanical. And everything to me about this new utopian, ecologic civilization has to do with, feelings and relationships in the natural world. And so it's kind of, to me, it feels like it's almost fighting against this medium of animation. But the idea of you as an architect building things and imagining things and helping us visualize how we can live together is so important. So I really am grateful you're on the planet, Henry.
Oh, thank you so much. Thank you so much, Bonnie. I think while you were speaking, when you mentioned the human connection between the characters, when that happened, that seemed to be a moment that stood out for you. Also, on a side note, I like to tell people also when I'm really happy with them, thanks for existing. So that's my version of what you just said. That really strikes a chord. So thank you. But yeah, it sort of strikes me in that clip that it seems when in the beginning I talked about how technology in an imagined cyberpunk dystopian future seems to disconnect and atomize people from the environment and other people. What we saw in this future was more of one where technology actually helped us connect with our environment and connect with the people who are around us. So that's a key point that, and also a theme that I think will permeate throughout the slides that I show later. But yeah, so thanks for mentioning. I'm glad that was what stood out. So I kind of threw out that question, and this was actually the same question that was given to me during my first year at architecture school. And it was architecture is and fill in the blank. And we had a day to do it and a day to think or ponder this. And this was my answer. And I really liked how it kind of has multiple layers of meanings. Architecture is what we make of things. It's literally what we take things we make with our hands, or we build things. So it's what we make of material things, but it's also what we make of the situation, we make of the context that we're living in. And for example, we need shelter. It's cold. I see a cave. I do something about it. And that's sort of, in my opinion, that is architecture. So it's what we make of situations, and it's an integral part to just being a human being. And early on in my thesis, well, just early on in my life as well, Alan Watts has been some of an influence. And there's this quote by him on what is a thing, essentially. And is to understand that there are no such things as things, that is to say separate things. So a thing is a noun. A noun isn't a part of nature, it's a part of speech. There are no nouns in the physical world. There are no separate things in the world either. So the physical world is wiggly. And it's only when human beings get working at things, they build buildings in straight lines and try to make out that the world isn't really wiggly. So this has become sort of a philosophical point also in the beginning of thinking of my architectural thesis. It's connection versus disconnection is what architecture should do for us. And even way before, like 10 years before I got into architecture, I was researching Earthships because I was doing my undergrad in international affairs in DC, and I was very concerned with mass extinction and the state of our planet. And that led me to doing a report in Japanese for a Japanese class about energy and then buildings. And that's how I came across the concept of Earthships. And for those of you who are not familiar, I imagine some of you are, Earthships are a building system that allows your house to be completely passive and disconnected from the grid and provide itself with energy water, and grow some food, not all the food you need, but it helps to take care of yourself, to basically take back some of the control over your basic means of living and live autonomously in that regard. And it does so through really good passive architecture design. And the interiors, as you can see, can be quite modern, and you can live you don't have to do without the modern extravagances, and they come with in all sorts of shapes and sizes. And I highly recommend checking out their website, earthshipglobal.com. And at the Greater Earth, New Mexico Taos community, they do workshops, which was what I attended at first in 2017 for a month. And you can pay them to go through their whole training program, which is half a day of learning in the classroom and then half a day immediately of working on site. And at different stages of construction, because they have different Earthships popping up at different stages of construction, and you can learn in the morning and then go build at a building, one at the foundation stage, one at a later stage, and really get a comprehensive education. And meanwhile, you live in early Earthships, earlier test models, to get a feel of how they actually work. And that's what I did in 2017 in Taos, New Mexico. And what struck me first when I saw the building I was going to live in, which is the one you're looking at right now, it in the desert landscape, it really sort of reminded me of the first Star Wars movie, the Force, but the first one they made, and how it reflected where Luke started off in the movie. And by the way, the set for the movie for this scene was shot in Tunisia. And it's a prime example of how vernacular architecture responded to the natural phenomenon by going into the earth and connecting with the context. So this was where I stayed for a month, and it was quite a transformative time. And I met some really cool people. There were 40 of us, from 20-year-old early adults to old couples with gray hair. And we got to see a lot of crazy stuff that they experimentally built up in the desert. And New Mexico is a place with its own unique, outlandish flavor. You can see there's a flying saucer vernacle on that sign. I don't know why they would need that. But the year after that, in 2018, I went to do a work study with them, which was no more classes. We just built an Earthship from the ground up in a month. And this was the first Earthship in Japan. And the lady in the picture is Tomoko. And she's now the proud owner of this one, which is, I believe, an Airbnb right now. And it's in the mountains in Tokushima, Japan. There's a YouTube video, if you want to screenshot this and find it later. There's a sort of a walkthrough. But yeah, this was the building that I helped build, along with another 40 or so people, I think. And half of them were Japanese. Half of them were from all over the world. And this is the back of the building. This is in this beautiful mountain. And in comes Mike Raynolds, right? He is the mastermind behind this whole Earthship movement. He was the New Mexico architect who had to, fight the local legislation to try to defend what he was trying to do. They took away his license at one point, and he had to get it back. There's a documentary called Garbage Warrior, which I strongly recommend people who are interested to watch. It's about his journey in the Earthship movement, at least the earlier parts of it. And Earthships, what makes Earthship building special is basically they try to address these 6 principles of basic human needs. And it's comfortable shelter, water, food production, treatment of human waste, power, and treatment of garbage. So I'm going to walk through these systems really quickly. I'm not going to go into much detail, even though we have it all. So with comfortable shelter, it's all about thermal comfort, because 50% of our power household power in the United States usually goes to heating and cooling our buildings. So the idea is if you get a building that doesn't require energy to heat or cool, if you use the sunlight, if you create an insulated envelope around a lot of earth, which stores the warmed up temperature of the sun, and you make sure there's air going through it, the whole thing is going to maintain the same temperature, and you're not going to have to really input much energy into the process. So this is me at the Japan build, having lunch with the plumber, Lou. And you can see there's this blue foam stuff that's in front of the building, that's right behind where our legs. That's insulation. So I just want to show you how heavily insulated this building is. And later you can see the insulation is covered by the dirt, and that is what provides a lot of the earthy warmth and comfort. There's simple illustrations where you can see there's insulation and dirt, and that's what stores the solar heat in a cold climate. What happens when it's hot is basically because they have a southern facing, if you're in the northern hemisphere, southern facing, sun facing greenhouse, and by the laws of thermodynamics, the hot air in the greenhouse always wants to go up. So you open a vent, let it go up, and that creates suction. And that negative pressure is going to suck air from behind the building through a cooling tube, through a lot of earth. And the stable temperature of the earth is going to cool that hotter air from the outside. And by the time it makes its way into the building, it's cool. And you get basically free powered air conditioning by using sun and the laws of thermodynamics. So this is one of the key things that really was a breakthrough for Earthships, and what make them such a successful system for both the winter and the summer. And that is an example of responding to the natural phenomenon. Your building is connecting to the natural phenomenon to meet your needs, and there's no need to extract forcefully from the earth. This is a plan view of one of the Earthships with cooling tubes sticking out the back, and the greenhouse towards the south. Now the vents, the skylights, if they open, they also all have to be heavily insulated as well. Now let's talk about water. The roof harvests rainwater and drains them and filters them. They go through a water management module, which essentially divides hot and cold water and filters the water for normal use, and then filters it even more for drinking water. So all your water can come from the rain. And as you can see from this image, it's gravity fed, and it is used 4 times. You use it to wash yourself, and then it goes to the plants. After the plants use it, the gray water is sent to the toilet and then finally flushed out, and then used for outdoor plants along with your waste. So here is a photo from during construction at the Japan site. You can see there's like 6 feet of dirt between the exterior insulation and then the inside of the building, which means all of that earth is going to store up stable temperatures and emit it by radiation into the house. And then you can see the big water tanks that are outside that layer and going through, penetrating into the building. So after that, we have food production, treatment of human waste. So the food production is also a huge aesthetic plus for Earthships. In the southern greenhouses, you have these planters, and the planters are just, imagine waking up to that and walking out. It's great. And that's where, and to make these, you sort of dig them out and you put rocks of different sizes in them, and they filter water, they recirculate water for the plants. And this is water that you've already ideally used as a human being. And this is more planters during construction. And then we have power, which primarily now comes from solar and batteries. And they are what essentially provide for our means of modern living, despite having a lower impact on the environment. Now, when I was staying at Taos, some of you might notice, this is another question for you all. On the right, on the photo on the right, you can, did you notice, what is the little black box that's by the planter? Can anyone tell me if you know what that is, if you recognize what that is?
Is this some sort of water related device?
Well, it does power the pump, but it also powers the light. It's a car battery. So that little black box is a car battery. And that's the whole thing. That's the only thing that's powering the right side of this building. So this entire section of the building is powered by one car battery that's connected to solar panels, because that's all the power it takes to run this wing of this house I was staying in. It just needs to run the pipes for the water recirculation, the pumps, I mean, and it has to give you some lights and charge your phone and computers. And that was all that building took. Because it was a simple survival, the shower was like a gravity-fed shower in a heated black bag. But that was one of their early survival models, and it's dug into the ground for extra thermal stability. But it's just to show how much you can get away with by building a passive building like this. And in this one, you can see there's a wind turbine, a horizontal wind turbine, so that it's supposedly more efficient, but they stopped doing those because they fly away. They have a tendency to become helicopters and want to leave your building when the wind is too high. So after power, we have treatment of garbage, and this is why he's dubbed the garbage warrior. In the documentary, you can see a lot of glass bottles and cans being used. This is our construction site. We have all the used tires that are going to end up in dumps and cause tire fires. Instead of a cornerstone, the buildings usually start with a corner tire, and they are lined with cardboard at the bottom and packed with a sledgehammer with dirt until the dirt is very compact, and that provides a lot of structural stability, but also earthquake resistance, and also thermal capabilities. There's so much mass that can store a stable temperature. And the first course is, of course, filled with gravel so that water can travel through and not damage the first few courses. So this is what a tire wall looks like. Allegedly, you could drive a small truck into it, and the wall will be fine, but not your truck. Here's some steel rebar sticking out of the top so that a concrete bond beam could be poured to hold the wall together and be prepared for the roof. And so our construction sites are always like filled with trash, because we're using a lot of, let's say, digesting a lot of trash that otherwise would be somewhere else on the planet. And they cut two glass bottles and stick them together to create these beautiful bottle walls. These walls do not support weight, but they're great for partitions in the building where you let light through. They're great for bathrooms and kitchens and so on. And here's one of the cooling tubes you can see on the photo on the right. And there's a lot of garbage on the floor that is going to get buried into the floor. It looks really unsightly right now, but as you can see, once it's all covered up, the building looks quite nice, and nobody knows there's like trash behind their walls. And yeah, so so I just did a quick run through of the technical side of Earthships. And but as we discussed earlier, the mission of an architect is to help people understand how to make life more beautiful. And because we touched upon human connection, right? It doesn't quite do it for human beings if we're just technically taken care of, right? What makes a life more beautiful is also human connection. And our technologies, when it serves us to have better connections, is what actually serves our lives. So a little bit on connecting with the community. This is a little drawing they made in Japan for promoting the build and the whole process of building this, because it's so labor intensive, right? It's not a very commercial, streamlined process. You get to connect also through this global community. You get to connect with a lot of fun people. Those are our lunch boxes, and they're learning and everyone's growing based on a similar interest, and all these human connections are made from around the world, right? This is them getting their exam papers back, like on one of the last days of construction. So they're also like graduating, and there's Mike teaching, as well as pounding tires with us on site. And half of the group in Japan were Japanese, and half of us were from the rest of the world. It was a great time for me because you can see some of their names. You can see in the photo on the wall, there's Happy Birthday, Canada. So it's just, there's so much humanity involved in operations like this. And this is a father and son from New Zealand. The son was at the time 17 years old. And this is just wonderful parenting, in my opinion. And there's an old guy, Paul, and this is him with a local Japanese man who is retired, who were making soba noodles for us for free one night, because we met them at a local hot spring. So we would build the Earthship during the day, and some nights we would go to a local hot spring, and a hot spring bathhouse. And there are these local old Japanese dudes going, why are all these foreigners popping up in our like little mountain village? And we got to tell them, here's all the stuff we were doing. And then they thought it was a great thing. So they said, hey, we do this soba thing since we're retired. Let us do that for you. So we had a night of celebration, and there was dancing, and there were bonfires, and these things just spontaneously come together. And the place we stayed at in this mountain for building the Earthship was a upcycled, I'd say, school. It was a reused, repurposed school building that stopped being a school because everyone moved out of the mountains because of urbanization. But the schools were built so well, and so it became a simple living facility and a cafeteria for us, and we all camped inside the school's gymnasium. So that was life for a month. The blue tent was me, and yeah, it was a great time. And this brings me to the concept of what kind of a culture we want to pass down through our architecture, because I do feel like architecture really affects our culture and the culture DNA that we do pass down. And for example, this is in the photo. This is a shrine in Japan called I think it was Ise. Yeah, this is Shrine Ise. And you can see two identical shrines. One is more run down than the other. It's because every time one side decays and falls apart, they tear it apart and build an entirely new one that's just like the other one. And then they let the other one decay, and then they build a new one in the other lot. So there's these two buildings that keep on renewing, and they're the same design. And it's a big festival every time they do it. It takes like 10 years to come together. They do it once every 20 years. They spend 4 years drying the wood, and every part of it is a community effort, and it's a ceremony. So they cut the wood ceremoniously, and they parade it through the streets ceremoniously. And it's, as a cultural event, it connects the entire region of different villages and towns now share this common identity because they do this every decade or so. And we have sort of lost that as a culture. Now, back in the old days in North America, we did barn rising, right? So this was in Toronto. And back in the day, we had that too. You know, Anglo-Saxons, we did that too. And it was just a community effort, and it brought people together. And then the building now is a symbol, but also an act of connection. So that is also a question I want to pose, is how is our living environment shaping the culture, norms, and expectations that are passed down through generations? Because if you grow up in this, right, if you grow up in an Earthship and you take that for granted, it's like growing up with animation and taking that for granted, I guess. Sorry, I keep going back to that. But they're what they take as the norm for how human beings exist. It's like, oh yeah, of course, this is how we take care of ourselves, through our buildings, by interacting with nature. Duh, this is what human beings do. And if kids grow up with that in mind for granted, then we're looking at suddenly a different culture. So we're changing the cultural DNA of human beings, is what I think. And that's why artistic movements like solar punk and imagining the future and trying to bring about that future becomes so important. But we need to do that through good architecture, right? Not just one that is so polarized, because we have these huge buildings with green stuff on them that's extremely expensive and really hard to do. The waterproofing is a nightmare, and they make the building super heavy. And we go, okay, that's sustainability. And then we look at people going off on their own, doing some homesteading, and going, oh, they're just nobody wants to live there. So I think Earthships and similar concepts really sort of go into the in-between of these two polar opposites, and provide people with a palatable way forward, right? We need the ordinary person to be able to look at this way of living and go, oh, I can see myself doing that. And so we need to fill in this gap that is in the middle. And there's this statistic that they project 68% of human population will be urban by 2050. But when I see this, I don't go, oh, I should make sure I'm working on urban areas because that's what's important. No, what I see is, oh, this means the other 32% can be made radically resistant and sustainable based on technology we totally have already. This is great news. It will be a lot easier to make autonomous living in a non-urban environment, and we need a scale and a luxury that makes it palatable by ordinary people. So are there any thoughts and ideas on this, on making this way of living palatable and obtainable to the ordinary person, is my question to you all now.
All right. I guess our friends are probably thinking about some comments on that. I wanted to kind of raise the point we discussed earlier. The Earth, remember I was asking what was the downside of Earthship? If it's so progressive and sustainable and beautiful and functional, why aren't there more of that?
Yes. So right now, as I touched on before, just now, it's extremely, and I can't emphasize this more, extremely labor intensive. This is why we get 40 people, and a lot of them are not getting paid to do it. Well, fortunately, people are interested, but it's very expensive to build in the modern economy. It's probably cheaper in places like China because the raw materials and the labor are both going to be a lot cheaper. But in America, it's mostly the cost of the land, the cost of the material, the cost of the labor just drives everything up, because this is not a simple building that contractors can just give to workers that don't require many skills, right? Most of the houses built in America are just 2x4s, are just standardized pieces of wood that they get from a lumberyard, and they just use a nail gun, pop, 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 pop. And the building comes up. It's very quick, it's very cheap, it's very efficient. Everyone makes money. You have a house to live in. Everyone's happy. But the long-term effects of that, the aesthetics of that, the thermal comforts, you're just not getting it, and the house falls apart quicker. But so yeah, so the cost is the frontal cost. So you're investing a lot of money that over 30 or 40 years will pay itself back, because you won't be paying energy bills, and your house isn't going to fall apart as easily as the other ones. You can pass it down through generations. However, you don't see that money come back until much later in time. And a lot of times the way our society works with loans, our financial systems, and with permitting also, sometimes it can be hard to get. If you watch Garbage Warrior, you will see how difficult it can be when rules and regulations and building codes really make it difficult. However, in California, like once you find a place, a county where it's been done before, these things seem to pop up more, because once the local officials have approved the one, they understand it, and it makes it a lot easier for them to approve more of them. Yeah, but I say the biggest problem is people don't have that kind of money. And the financial society we live in is very, in North America especially, is very debt driven. So unlike in China, well, China is getting worse in that regard. Everyone's borrowing money, but not everyone. But in the US, people are expected to have debt, and it's a given. And it's hard to get those things approved, and it's harder to build buildings that are better for the long term, but require a large cost in the beginning. So yeah.
Or what I was getting at is the value system, the finance, probably have to change in order to make all of these more possible. So imagine these the shrine buildings. Are they getting paid by putting up that majestic shrine buildings, or for the barn houses, raising barns? Is there a lot of money involved? I mean, we supposed to have more money today than 100 years ago, but why there is less of such buildings being made, less majestic buildings being made compared to before? So there's something changed during the years of technology and financial advancements, and there's something kind of we lost along the way. That was what I quickly shared with the pictures, and maybe Esther later can show us a little bit more, because we both live in the Tibetan area where the huge big houses, where everybody has this big mansion, stone houses, and we participated in some of their building of those houses. It was very labor intense, and it was very tiring, and yet they don't spend that much money on that. The thing is, they had this trade labor system that they use credit, like their own effort becomes a credit to help each other to build houses. So building becomes a communal practice. Community building is making the building practice.
Would you like to pull up some of those images right now, or do you prefer to do it at the end?
Yeah, I will do it at the end if we have time, but I want to give it back, give stage back to you or other share.
I just wanted to add to your point that when you talked about what was it? The sorry, my mind's blanking for a little bit. Value systems, yeah, and having a lot more money. We have more money, but I think we have less wealth. Like we're less wealthy, even though there's a lot more money going around. And I'm not just talking about inflation, how money is worth less. I'm talking about the things we own, the things that we can easily buy, is not as valuable as the things we used to have for free. So the community connection, the trust, oh my God, talk about a low trust society, right? If we talk, people in China talk a lot about societal trust being an issue. And even in Northern America, we think it's getting worse, right? And yeah, I think we've lost. Value is trust, connection is trust is value, connection is value, and because we have a system that seems to, with technology involved, it seemed to be easier to guide us away from those values, and therefore I think we're less wealthy, even though we seem to have more money.
Values replaced with paper monies.
Yeah, which is supposed to be trust and something anyway, it's a whole rabbit hole of what money is and how it.
Seems like
Yeah.
it seems
China-
like China has the chance to build this kind of new system, but actually there's less options for China in now the moment to make this in reality, because majority people is still on the basic needs. The building function are still laboring. Like if we can see the more modern, more contemporary buildings, it's being rebuilt for many times. There is a huge system and a lot of education needs to be done if we want to create this modernized, a much better system, new building. It needs the process. I don't think it's that easy to just build it at the first time.
I think you mentioned two things that are very interesting. One is modern, because interestingly, a lot of these ideas behind buildings like this is not modern at all. And it's actually very vernacular architecture, which means 乡土建筑. So like very, it's what people have done for thousands of years. If you look at the cave buildings in China, the Yaodong, and it basically works like this, right? And I think regards to cost also, I think, so I don't really think, to me, modern buildings are the bad ones. And there's this, and we should be going back to our roots a little bit of just using less effort and getting more from nature, getting more done for us by nature. And I think in the old times, people did that. The other thing I want to highlight is this is probably easier to do in China logistically and physically. So meaning, 就是从事物上和材料上，物理上来讲 it's a lot easier in China because things are cheaper, labor and materials are cheaper. But when it comes to the mind, when it comes to getting people to think this is a good idea, when you mention education, that's the light bulb. I think that's what a lot of the people who are at this Zoom meeting here today care a lot about, is education, because we know that's where we're going to see the biggest impact, and that's where things have to start.
Yeah, I want to point out the first point when I say it's modern building, more like a concept, because we used to have this wisdom, but architecture is like fashion. When we forgot this wisdom, we have to learn it once again. So
yeah, we rediscover. Yeah. It's interesting how these things tend to run in circles. I want to try to see how many points we can get through. So the next point is, I say, a world under stress. My thesis talks about networks and connections, and especially our infrastructure systems. So we talked about, hey, I can meet all of my needs at my house. Well, not all of them, but a lot of my crucial needs, basic needs at home. But what about forming a network and being connected with the greater world? Now, the pandemic and the supply chain issues, and then I don't know if you're familiar with the big Texas blackout during the winter of 2021, because Texas is usually not that cold, but they had a really unusually cold winter, and the power systems didn't work. So a lot of people had no power, and it was way colder than their houses were built for, and they had no ways to keep themselves warm. It was a huge problem. And some people actually died because they kept their cars on in the garage in order to get warmer. And the car exhaust, the mono dioxide, the 一氧化碳中毒 from their cars being on inside the garage, and they just died. So it's extremely tragic. Well, some of it is ignorance, but some of it is our centralized systems are failing us when it comes to our basic needs. We start realizing through the pandemic also, if you get cut off, you can't survive because you're all dependent on a big facility somewhere, or a government-run facility, or a big company-run facility to keep everyone alive. And that is not gonna really work out in stand the test of more intense situations. So this is from the Earthship website. They have Earthship treaties, and I highlighted four of those. One is, this is what they think they want to do. One is to reduce the economic and institutional barriers between humans and their habitat. I love this one. Reduce the economic and institutional barriers between humans and their habitat. So we have so many of those: red tape, rules, regulations, bank loans. The whole system seems to be setting up barriers, blocking us from trying to get what we want from our immediate environment. And the second is to create a less stressful plane of existence for humans in an effort to reduce the stress that they in turn place on the planet and each other, which I also think struck a chord. It's just brilliant. Let you get your needs met, you feel safe, you're not as stressful, you don't have to pay power bills, you're a nicer person. It's just, anyway, to empower individuals with the unarguable forces of nature, as opposed to incapacitating them with the smothering forces of politics and bureaucracy. And the last one is to evolve humanity into an earthen harmony already exemplified by more evolved structures such as plants, animals, and water. That's just, this is something I want to discuss like towards the end of today's conversation. Like it's, anyway, so bypassing institutional and financial barriers, taking back some of that control, highlighting these three basic needs is the departure point of my thesis program, basically. And when I talk about these decentralized networks, we have now a house that is providing us with some food, but electricity and water. What if we connect these houses into a larger network? And if one family's power goes off or their water runs out, another family's, your neighbor's systems can feed you temporarily before you can fix it up. And what happens when a pandemic breaks out and you need to quarantine? Well, your community can quarantine, so away from the rest of the world, and you can basically survive without interacting with the outside world for 2 weeks because all of you have power and some food and water. So it makes a pandemic situation, makes us a lot more resilient to a pandemic situation if we have a smart system of self-sufficient modules to feed our basic needs. And if you connect it to a food forest, for example, as a part of your community system, there's so much abundance, so much potential for the combination between ecological agriculture and sustainable agriculture. So for those of you who are not too familiar with food forests, I imagine most of you will be. This is just a quick understanding of it. And we're not abandoning our urban areas as well, right? We can be connected to the urban areas. We can feed it if we have more power than we need, but also urban environments can be equipped with rainwater harvesting and solar power and batteries. It's very low tech for us right now. Again, imagining that solar punk future, like in the video at the beginning, we can really use the technologies that are already not too expensive for us anymore. And it's low tech, it's easy for anyone to understand. Actually, all the systems in an Earthship require only middle school level, or in America, maybe high school level, chemistry and science physics to understand. So in China, it's like 初中水平的物理和化学. You can totally understand how an Earthship works. So it's really great. So going to my thesis project that I graduated with, The Earthly Matters of Cosmic Awareness was my title, because again, I started with these things that we talked about in the beginning, these issues, and non-duality, the idea that everything is interconnected. And also during my first year, I was given this picture of a plant and told to do something with it. And I imagined how the microorganisms in the soil that surround its roots form their own little cosmos, their own little universe. There's a whole universe of microorganisms down there in the soil that's creating an environment that helps life thrive, right? So that's the idea of plant life and connectivity, sort of kickstarted the philosophy between my thesis. And I very fortunately, I was invited to do lectures as a grad student at Virginia Tech to the students there. And here's a cute poster that students made for me, and where I talk about my experience with Earthships, which goes into more architectural detail. And here are some photos from the Japan build site, and how I compare it to how artists envision a colony on the moon. So the lower left picture is people imagining what a moon settlement would be like, and you can sort of see the parallels, see the similarities, and this struck me very much. Was because how, yes, in an extreme environment where you have to make use of everything you can and make the most effective system possible, things end up looking kind of similar to how you would live if you want to make the most out of your environment through your architecture on Earth. So I find that really interesting, and I needed a purpose. And the purpose was already there, which was, if you're familiar with the idea of the diffusion of innovation, how ideas tend to take hold and infect and be adopted by most of the population, it seems to go through phases like this. In the beginning, you have the innovators, the 2.5%, like Mike Raynolds, who come up with these ideas and spend 40, 50 years to develop them. And then there's the early adopters like us, who see these ideas and go, this is brilliant, we should all be doing this. I should get involved in this. Let's do this immediately. And then we get to the early majority, where people start to like 40% of the population starts doing this, and things get cheaper because more people are doing it and everyone's used to it. The policies make way and things start happening, and then the late majority follows because it's already a thing. And then in the end, you have the people who really don't like change, who are going to lag along. But the problem is the chasm, right? The problem seems to be getting beyond the early adopters and really spreading this to the early majority of the population. And this is kind of where we are, not just with Earthships, or this idea of building has been around for forever. People have built passively. Famous architects have used these Earthship principles in their own buildings, just not so extremely for as early as time, but or as early as humans, I guess. But we're just stuck at this chasm, it seems. And so this is the hardest part to get through. So I sort of thought my thesis project should be a project that deals with this, that tries to spread awareness and get more people in on this idea. So I started drawing again from the plant, and I started making connections to different parts of the plant and comparing them to different parts of the building, the soil, to the canopy, to the roof, the stem to the structure, the roots to the foundation, and so on. So this first off is the seed, the awareness. And I sort of started seeing myself as a seed planted where I live, near campus. And there was this park, this green area that I go to almost every day. And it really saved me during COVID because we were isolated. So I would go here and I see this little bowl-shaped terrain where a building could be put in, lodged in, and have south-facing windows, just like an Earthship. And I thought this is a perfect place for a building. And like a plant having a seed, the architecture project the beginning of the ideas is also like a seed, and the architect is like the DNA inside the seed, trying to decide what this building is going to be, what this plant is going to grow into. And we find a site, we have a seed, and it's deciding, it's reading the environment, getting the rain and the stable temperature of the earth, and trying to figure out what building it's going to be. And again, I'm keeping in mind these elements of energy, water, and food. And I went deeper into the idea of the seed with the help of some of my advisors, my professors at school. I went into the anatomy of a tomato seed. I decided the building was going to be a seed bank, a seed library rather, and a greenhouse that grows Cherokee tomato, Cherokee purple tomatoes, which is allegedly a Native American heirloom seed. And I think it's we don't need to convince everyone that here that having seed libraries and keeping heirloom seeds is a big part of food security in today's world. So being informed by the natural geometry of the golden ratio and how the seed spirals out into a plant, I started making these designs. And then so that's it. That is the seed, which is the awareness of how the building starts. And then we go to the roots, which to me symbolizes the foundation of a building, and really thinking about going into the earth and developing more ideas of the building like that. And in a book called Fire and Memory on Architecture and Energy, it talks about how the cave in the womb of Mother Earth, without fire, the cave is a barren womb, just as without our star. Well, that I added that part. Just as without our star, this pocket of the universe would be a lifeless party. So I think the nostalgia of the primitive gesture of inhabitation is a tepid, round nostalgia for the womb and the nest. This is not a merely spatial sentiment, but it is also, and above all, a thermal sentiment. So going back to the worms of going into Earth. And this is actually the idea between a lot of Frank Lloyd Wright's buildings, which are focused around the fireplace. But I started making more sketches, kind of fantasy or sci-fi-like. And I started going into technical detail of the foundation and everything, because grad school. And started getting an idea of a foundation. And the AI helped me a little bit in coming up with some ideas. I started feeding it real photos of real Earthships, and giving it this image, which it gave me out of text. And it started giving me back more interesting stuff, which is a hybrid between reality and what the AI came up with through words. And I started getting a better idea of how I want this building to be structurally. So we go to the stem of the building, of the plant, and we talk about growth and tropism, how plants seed light, and we try to come up with a structure and try to decide how the light is going to go into the building depending on the local climate and angles of the sun. And I started coming up with this structure that sort of branches out like a plant does, and it should be a wooden structure, and but it has to be built in the end. So I decided to go with standardized dimensions of lumber that's readily available in the industry, that are the right size that you can just start building with. And then I started coming up with a structure, and that finally leads to supporting the roof, which I think is like a canopy of a plant. And once you have that, you sort of have a complete building. And the roof, just like how once a plant has its leaves out, it can start gathering sunlight and it can start gathering water. Our building, after the roof is finished, it starts getting that southern sun through the glass. It starts having a roof area for water harvesting. And now it starts functioning the way we want it to. And this is an image that shows how during the summer on the site, the sun angle of Blacksburg, where my school was, will be coming in like this, and it will be hitting the parts of the building that we don't have to walk on. Oh no, it will be hitting, yeah, it will be hitting the plants and the water storage, but not necessarily the person walking in the deck. And this is summer, so, and we're tapping into the stable cool temperature of the earth with the cooling tubes, and also rainwater is harvested and gravity fed into these tanks inside these upside down pyramids of glass holding water, which can absorb heat from the sun, but also they're great display for people to see, because this building is about spreading awareness. And this water system does not require power, since it goes through with gravity, just like the old Roman aqueducts and Petra. And in the winter, the December 30-degree sunlight is going to come in like this. It's going to warm up the water that we're displaying for irrigation of the plants. And that temperature, that water is going to hold that temperature overnight. And also it heats up the walls, and you're tapping into the temperature of the earth during winter, and it's now hitting the people walking. And so now it has a canopy, it's gathering power, water, and it's making food. However, what we really want to gather is people, right? We want to gather the minds of people and convince them that this is a good idea. So this is a list of all the schools in the area, and the purpose of this building, other than being a seed library and a greenhouse, is to show student groups, this is the future of living. This is a way you should be looking at our buildings, and explain it. So it's like a science day tour for these students. So we're using the plant roots to gather these people. And really what makes a building, what makes a project, is the people that are making it and the people that will be using it. That's what keeps a project alive, even after it's done building, right? A real life cycle of a building kind of just started once it's done. And it sort of goes on throughout its life. So this graph sort of shows the rain patterns throughout the year and the sun patterns in summer and winter. And there's a sort of a compost site already at the park that they're already using for all the leaves and branches they cut. And I propose a compost toilet. And we can use the parking lot of the church that's already there. This is all architectural stuff. But the building is 2 levels. On the surface level, you go in and there's wooden platforms. And when you go down, there's this hallway that you can push wheelbarrows with dirt through to work on the planters and the tomato plants. But also it's built this way so that you can easily have tour groups go in one door and tour the building and come out the other side. So it's built for the purpose of spreading awareness and education. And the seed library is on the right side under the teepee, like pointy side, below the second floor, below where this monk is meditating, is the darkest part of the building where the seeds will be held. And finally, in my thesis, I talk about the void inside. The point I'm trying to make, right, is by constructing a building, we tend to block out most natural elements and create a void within. So spaces created by cosmically unaware architecture is detached from our cosmic context, lost and orphaned, left to be defined narrowly by what goes on within. It's year 2023, visions of space colonization rekindled, while we struggle to preserve our own habitat on Earth. More and more of us find ourselves as atomized individuals, closed off, lonely, and disconnected despite the internet, plugged into short-lasting and shallow stimulations offered by corporations. We watch as satellites cruise the night sky like false stars. So perhaps it is time our buildings reminded us to wiggle and vibe as the miracles we truly are, living waves in an ocean of stars. And that was the drawing I wanted to end on. And that is not about the building, and it's really about everything else. So Yeah, so this is we made it. We got through all the slides. The question I want to propose finally is about human evolution. How we talked about revisiting, right, reviving old ideas in architecture. How to make that cool again, and reconstructing, I guess, cosmic awareness as a part of human evolution. And we have the pyramids, which used to point, which still, yeah, are made to point to the stars. So people used to care about this. And also, I want to pose the idea of looking at human beings zoomed out. If we look at the Earth and look at human activity from very far away, we're kind of like a coral reef, right? The coral creates the reef. The little living thing we can hardly see. Just like when you look at Earth from space, you don't see human beings. You see the cities, you see the lights, you see the urban sprawl over the landscape, you see the gray. They're like the coral that we see when we see the reef that we see when we see a coral reef. So maybe we should think of ourselves more in a cosmic context, like an organism that is evolving and trying to build a better environment around us, because we seem to take over and make things go extinct. But in a coral reef, the coral created a reef and it became a habitat for everyone else too. And it made it better for themselves that way in a reciprocal relationship. So I just wanted to throw these things out and open up the floor to all manners of discussion. And Vivian and Esther Song, if you two want to share about the Tibetan style buildings of the Jiarong people with the really thick rock walls, I also want to see those. So yeah.
Thank you. Thank you, Henry. What a wonderful presentation. It's so inspiring. And going through all the slides, it doesn't feel that long. But yeah, we do have a time limit, guys. We are running actually above time limit. So if you do have to go, please do. And the session will be recorded and we'll find ways to get to everyone. But if you do like to learn more and talk more, please stick around and we'll continue as we go. Yeah, I want to first invite Esther, if you are around. Yeah, share a little bit of your thoughts and also tell us a little bit about yourself. Tell us about yourself and your thoughts.
I was so happy listening to Henry's sharing because I was keep nodding and smiling all the time. There's a lot of things I really resonate with because it reminds me of my experience a few months ago. I was living in an eco village in New South Wales. It's an eco village like 1 hour driving distance from Sydney. And one of my good friends joins it. He's also the pioneers in deep ecology fields. So I was living there and helping him to build the house. And he's also using all the natural materials like hempcrete to build the house. So it's a very interesting experience for me to see how this ecological movement goes in Australia. So yeah, I was resonate with one thing you mentioned before, which is the money cost in doing the Earthship and also the ecological concept. Because in China, I think for younger generation, lots of people choose to live in eco village and start to having the ecological community is because right now the rent in the city is so high. So the young generation can start to exploring the alternative lifestyle. But the people I know in the eco village in Australia, I realize they're all middle class at least. Although I think the knowledge they have are incredible. Like people have the open platform to share all the knowledge, how to build the compost toilet and how to use all the natural materials. What's the failure? What's the experiment looks like? Like people have the platform to share those knowledge. But still, I realize first you need to build up your foundation in the capitalism to have the money, and then you can have the freedom to choose the concept, like the eco village and all those natural buildings concept, because because the concept, the land in the village are generally more expensive than the normal land. So I found it quite ironic, the things happening in Australia. Yeah, I definitely agree. Like you need a lot of foundation, including your money, your energy, and also your knowledge, so that you can start your project to choose this lifestyle and choose to build your own ecological building. Yeah, and the second thing is, while I was participating in this building and in this project, it's pretty fun. I really agree. Like the half a villager, they were helping each other. Similar thing happening in Jiarong, Tibetan area. Like they kind of have the system, like people had the credit that they dedicate their time and energy to help each other. So I find that's something very similar with the Tibetan area. So I also got the opportunity to know the people, and also people who are more like-minded, who are really care about the social and also environmental impact while we are doing the experiments, ecological experiment. So yeah, I think that's what you're sharing is really inspiring, and also I can resonate a lot with my own experience. So I really appreciate that. Thank you so much.
That's great. That's that's so good to hear.
Shini, would you like to share some more
Yeah.
about the system in
You you guys all heard me ranting about our system so much. I want to shout out to anyone in our group today, like if you have worked or lived or participated programs in eco villages, and share your experiences, because these are, I think, that the next phase for a community, you know, like our first generation, not the first one, 1.0, that's the villages, right? It's everyone know each other, and then everyone kind of marrying into each other. It's like we're all relatives, the kinship based. And then we come to the cities at the 2.0 kind of urban community building, and we have you know, neighbors who probably most of the neighbors we don't know their names, and we have want to do nothing with them, but well, we live together, we share the same pipes, so garbage sorting systems. And then the third 3.0, I think the more upgraded way of living together is these ways of communities or eco villages or consensus communities. And I believe some of our friends here, Celeste, definitely, I think you have worked in it or grown up in such villages. I want to hear your experiences as well, and if you're around. And I noticed a few friends over there just now. I don't know if they're still here. Yeah, please share. Please share. It's much more of hearing all your stories as well. And so Celeste, I don't know if you're here. I know you're here. Celeste is our great friends, and it's very active and helping so much in putting up all this resources and notes in the chat. But I don't see you, but if you want to come and say hi. Oh yeah, hi Celeste.
Hello.
Yeah, tell us your experience.
Yeah, so especially my father, he's been trying to develop an eco-village in Ohio since the 1980s. And the name for it was Green Fire, which is a phrase from Aldo Leopold. And so he originally started it around 1980. And again, because it was the 1980s, people didn't know what eco-villages were. And so he had a very hard time with that. And so we've had to move the eco-village around different parts of Ohio over the last 30, almost 40 years now. And it's still been very hard. Getting people to work together in an eco-village context it's a non-trivial task. So that's been the biggest challenge, getting everyone to, well, finding land again, especially in the US, land is very expensive. and then also just getting when you have a group of people, having the personalities mesh together really well and finding resources and things. So it's been somewhat frustrating in that sense. It's been a very long project, and it's not been as successful as some other eco-village projects. But it's still the dream, and my father is still trying to work on that. And that's where I grew up. I grew up on an eco-village, and not just eco-village. He called it the Green Fire Farm and Earth Regeneration Center. So not just about people living
Remind us
together.
how many years ago was that?
Oh, well, the original idea was around 1980. So it's been more than my whole life. I was born in 1984. And so pretty much my whole life we've grown up in this context where not just eco-village, but ecological education and earth regeneration and all the different things that we're talking about tonight, basically. He actually trained with Bill Mollison in permaculture, and he's also a natural builder, and he does all the sort of renewable energy things too. So he's pretty much everything you could need for designing an eco-village from scratch he can do. So it's been great being around that for the last almost 40 years.
Great resources. And are they like what Esther says, possibly like millionaire rich people back then in the 80s that they come about these ideas? Is that something that they have resources that they wanted to create such vision, or what was the context?
Yeah,
when
it was, we've never had any resources. And actually, to some degree on purpose, that we're actually pacifists, and so we don't want any of the money that we're producing to having to go to the government to pay for the military. So it's the whole time it's just been very, very, very low budget, just volunteer work and just surviving by whatever resources we could find. So, and that's been part of the problem. It hasn't been maybe successful for maybe that reason. Finding money is hard, but
yeah.
But
Yeah.
These sort of things can be done if there's enough energy and work put into them, even with a very low budget, I think.
Possible. Would you like to live in such communities in the future if possible?
Oh, yeah, very much.
Probably
I would, yeah,
want to.
yeah. Again, if I can find a place where I can do that and also do some of the other more academic things, I'm really interested in academia too. But I haven't been able to find a place where the two of them match up yet.
Well, I think that has been my wish. I would love to live in such communities and get my PhD in such communities of building
Yeah.
houses and doing academic studies as well.
Exactly.
You think so?
Yeah.
Maybe we should start one.
Yeah.
Charles, help us.
Right now, I'm just stuck in very, very suburban Costa Rica, so it's not ideal. But I'm lucky to have a job at the moment, but I really I'm looking for something more in harmony with everything that we've been talking about tonight.
Yeah, well, let's hope for that. Low hope for that. Yeah. Anyone else in the chat? Charles, I would love to hear your thoughts. You post some interesting questions and your comments and reflections.
Well, first I want
We've
to
been
thank
through that generations all before us. So tell us a bit what we have missed.
the Earth Charter held a webinar recently on ecological civilization, and they asked people like Andrew Swartz and David Corton, what is ecological civilization? And Andrew went, who knows? We don't know. We can't, we've never lived in it. And as I reflected on that and the papers that were provided, I discovered that I've lived in ecological civilization for nearly 15 years, but I didn't know it. And it was an intentional community. We're building on 320 acres of farmland to build a new culture or a new civilization with a dual purpose to enhance egoic advancement, the personal, spiritual, community, balance, conscious, sustainable living, with the development of the technology to be able to survive what we believe are still facing us in the future. So Henry, your presentation was fascinating for me in several ways, and we don't have enough time to address them all, just like there's a lot of treasures that you haven't had time to share with us in part one of your presentation. But like in the intentional community of STEL, we had active and passive solar and envelope house. The whole community was a research and development center in a society. And it never grew more than 150 residents full time, but lifelong learning, parent education began prenatal. We had our own marked. You'd go in anytime you wanted to and get whatever you needed and just write down in the ledger how much you took and what you owed. Right? You know, it's just it was utopian. It was the closest example of utopia I've ever imagined. And the one point that I want to raise during this is that Henry, it's probably sacrilegious to paraphrase Frank Lloyd Wright, but I challenge you to do that. I invite you to bring up that beautiful quote you did of him, either about the purpose of architect or architecture, because it is not consistent with what you have represented in this 90 minutes. There's not the heart, the sense, the consciousness, what to me is the Earth steward Earthship that goes beyond whatever he said, make me feel good, whatever that quote was. If you can easily find that and bring it up, I bet this group can say, wow, let's add a couple of words in there and let the world start quoting Henry Mitchell on what really is the case today. And I'm working with a couple of people, Harry Yavigi in New York City, biomimicry, launching Brand Earth, and Dr. Tamsin Woolley Barker, an ecological biomimicry specialist, and featured in the current documentary, The Endangered Generation. They'll both eat your stuff alive, and I'm so glad that we're going to be able to have the recording to share with them. Yeah, if you find that quote, something about, you know, helping people feel good or look good.
It was something about something about life.
Yeah, I was going to try to capture a screenshot, but that's when John Cobb was still on my phone. Here you go. The mission of an architect is to help people understand how to make life more beautiful. That's beautiful. Is it all encompassing? Does it encompass ecological civilization?
Yeah, because it's open to beauty is a concept, you know, to the beholder. So to me, I just go, oh yeah, beautiful. Of course, Earthships are beautiful. When I touch the wall of an Earthship in November when it's freezing outside at night, and I go in and I touch the wall and it's radiating a little bit of warmth into my hand, and I go, this is beautiful. I look out the window, I see the stars in the desert, and I go, I'm connected. This is beautiful. So to me, that's beautiful. And but what do a person living in a concrete building with air conditioning blasting, you know, what do they think is beautiful? Do they share my sense of beauty? It's the question here. Is it all encompassing? I think to me it kind of is, but I'm the kind of person who likes to read in and expand definitions. When I look at a word, it's always a really broad scope of meaning, and I go, oh yeah, this I could throw things in there. But
well, I work with John Cobb, who at 99 is still trying to help the planet with regeneration and about conscious awakening. And you use the word awakening there. And with all of the hunger, the death, the pain, the pandemics, the wars, it seems to me that a mission is more than making life more beautiful. And the one slide that you provided that I also wanted to comment on that really made my heart sing, you talked about how the coral are creating an environment for themselves that serves themselves but blesses everyone else. To me, that is what I'm seeing that you're bringing that is not inherent in Frank Lloyd Wright's in that particular quote. So thank you anyway, and I look forward to continuing to learn from you and to connect you with a few of these other people whose minds you will blow and hearts you will warm as well as you have mine. Thank you.
Thank you so much. I'm looking forward to that as well. The connection again is what's key here in this change of value. So yeah, I really appreciate that. And yeah, Frank Lloyd Wright, I honestly don't know what he meant by beauty. So yeah, we'll see. You know, we're talking. So as long as we speak our truth and keep tweaking them and making the message better, and then some things will go. So I'm really thrilled tonight.
Well, I am too, and as we respond to either Vivian or Celeste's call to build us 4.0, sign me up, right?
Yeah, I'm waiting to get my PhD in such learning communities. And we build this and I credit myself. That's my wish. And yeah, and what about the coral reef, I wanted to share this beautiful quote by Ginny Bias from biomimicry, and life always creates conditions conducive to life. And then that's the thing we do as life. We always create environment that more livable to ourselves and other lives as well. And maybe human doesn't realize that much, but the other parts of this living world is constantly producing life for each other, good environment for each other, livable community, livable environment to each other. Maybe that's something we should learn from this natural world. I wanted to see if YL, who if you're here, because I wonder if this is Liang Ying. I wonder if this is you, Liang Ying. And if and she was just sharing. Ah, that's you.
Hello, friends.
I knew it.
Yes, it's me. And
Good to have you,
try to
Ying.
hide myself, but it seems like I didn't manage to. And Vivian spotted me. Yeah, and it's really because the community I'm at the moment is really related to the topic today. So I just want to share, but I can't really show you guys the whole community because otherwise my internet will collapse because the Wi-Fi are hide it in different buildings. But I can kind of show you. Let me see what. Yeah. So I'm in northern Thailand, and I was just sitting by this. It's called Gaia Cafe. It's one of the natural buildings in this community, and it's really like I've never seen it's a Gaia Cafe. It's like where you can buy drinks and where you can buy some products, but I've never seen any shop that is like at this open entry into the buildings. And there's maybe I can show you. There's in the distance is you see this is a vermi compost toilet, so that all our poop and all the like the loo and everything goes to feed the earthworm. I don't know whether you can see, it's like behind the banana tree. This is where the earthworm are, and then the huge building in the front is where is the vermi compost toilet. So yeah, and in the distance is the community center. It's called Sala. There's a maybe more closer. It's a two-story natural buildings. Maybe you can't see by and there so I was here with a group of Chinese. They did a workshop in deep ecology here. And then I stay on for the Gaia Calling is their 10-year anniversary celebration. So like 60 people, around 60 people will come. It's a Gaia ashram, I would say, in Southeast Asia. It's kind of the like a pioneer in eco-village, permaculture, land regeneration, and deep ecology. Yeah, it's really as I type in the chat, is even in their t-shirt, it said community of all beings. So it's if you are in Thailand or in Southeast Asia, it's a good place to come. Yeah,
you should organize the tour. We'll come with you.
Wow. Sure. Yeah, thank you. And good to meet friends like Charles, Esther, Vivian, and Henry. Your Chinese really like impressed me. So this is besides all the PPT, like all your experience on Earthship. Thank you.